Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maggie Horsfield, and I am the Deputy Mayor here in the City of North Bay, as well as a board member for the Federation of Northern Ontario Municipalities, better known as FONOM. As we begin today's event, I'd like to take the time to acknowledge that we are in the territory of the Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850, and that the land on which we gather is the Nipissing First Nation traditional territory and the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe. We respect and are grateful to be able to hold this event on these lands with all of our relations. On behalf of the municipalities in Northern Ontario, I would like to welcome you to the Northern Ontario Leaders Debate. I want to express our gratitude to the leaders for agreeing to participate in today's event, especially in light of this week's winter storm. While our neighbors in Southern Ontario referred to it as the storm of the decade, we in the North simply called it Thursday. This afternoon, we will engage in discussions about the issues and challenges specific to our region. While we recognize that activities in the United States affect all of Ontario, FONOM emphasizes the importance of focusing the concerns relevant to Northern Ontario. To prepare for today's debate, the FONOM board reached out to over a dozen organizations and groups to gather questions for consideration. We carefully narrowed those questions down to the 5 that you will hear today. The leaders do not know the specific questions in advance, but they were informed about the general topics that would be addressed. Now, it is my great pleasure to introduce our moderator for this afternoon. He is an individual who has become a familiar voice for many at their homes and in their vehicles as the host of Morning North, CBC Radio's morning show for Northeastern Ontario. Markus Schwabe has been with CBC Radio for over 35 years. He started in Saskatchewan, hosted the morning show in Prince George, BC, and has spent the last 25 years at CBC Sudbury, where he jokes that Sudbury is the farthest south he has ever lived. I'd now like to welcome Markus and the leaders to the stage. Thank you and enjoy.
Thank you, Maggie. And yes, we have one more leader on her way. Don't worry, she will be here. And I just want to thank FONOM. For inviting me to be the moderator this afternoon. My job is to keep the leaders on track and ensure that each get their fair share of time to state their positions. Now, there are 5 main questions, again, that were developed by FONOM. After opening remarks, each of the leaders will have up to 2 minutes to answer the question. After each question, we will allow the leaders to address each other in an open debate. To wrap up the afternoon, we'll give each of the leaders up to 3 minutes of closing comments. The order of the opening remarks has already been made by draw. Now, FONOM has asked each of the parties to provide a short biography of their leaders, and we'll begin with what was provided by the Liberal Party. Bonnie Crombie will deliver more for the people of Ontario. More access to health care, more for your kids and their classrooms, more support for working families to make life affordable. As a mayor of Mississauga and a member of Parliament, she made life better for real people every day. She has the experience as a leader and as a business executive that our province needs right now. Bonnie's plan will get everyone in Ontario a family doctor, cut taxes, and lower home heating and hydro bills, and build homes that people can actually afford. Bonnie is going to do more for you. Next to Bonnie Crombie is Marit Stiles, the leader of the Ontario NDP. She has served as a leader of the official opposition in the Legislative Assembly in the 43rd Parliament. Stiles came to Ontario from Newfoundland to study and stayed because of what Ontario offered, the opportunity to build a good life. Stiles has dedicated her life to public service and helping make life better for people across Ontario. She worked for cabinet ministers in the first Ontario NDP government, has led health policy development, and negotiated to defend Canadian workers and jobs as Director of Policy and Bargaining at ACTRA. Stiles stepped up to serve as a trustee at the Toronto District School Board, the largest school board in North America, and was first elected MPP for Davenport in 2018. Stiles lives in Toronto with her partner and 2 daughters. From winning good deals for workers to standing up for stronger public schools as an MPP, and now fighting to restore the promise of Ontario as the leader of the Ontario NDP, Stiles is running to be a premier who's on your side. Next, Doug Ford. Doug Ford's entire career has been built around protecting people. A businessman before entering politics, Ford knows what it takes to create jobs and protect people's paychecks. As a city councillor, Ford fought hard to protect taxpayers. As the 26th Premier of Ontario, Ford is fighting hard to protect Ontario's economy. He's protecting Ontario's neighbourhoods from dangerous criminals and cleaning up our streets by clearing out encampments and banning drug injection sites near schools and daycares. Now, as Canada stares down the threat of Donald Trump's tariffs, Ford is ready to fight for what's right and protect Ontario. Mike Schreiner, leader of the Green Party of Ontario, became Ontario's first Green MPP when he was elected to represent the riding of Guelph in 2018. Leader of the Ontario Greens for more than a decade, Mike is known at Queen's Park as a champion for affordable homes, healthcare, education, and affordable clean energy. Mike, his wife Sandy, and their 2 daughters like to spend their free time hiking, cycling, and staying active in their community. Ladies and gentlemen, the leaders of our parties. The first question this afternoon is about money. Municipalities in Northern Ontario are facing tough times. Not only are they responsible for water, roads, garbage dumps, many social services have been downloaded to towns and cities. Municipalities have to pay for these services with property taxes, and that's a burden, especially in rural and northern communities that have a smaller tax base but serve huge areas. To each leader, what will your party do to modernize the financial relationship between the province and municipalities? And we begin this question with Marit Stiles. 2 minutes.
All right, we missed our openings.
Opening statements.
Oh, my goodness. My bad.
I'm ready. We can go to the
Thanks for that. Skip the questions. Let's go to the opening statements. We'll come back to that question in a second, and I'm not going to repeat it. So let's have our opening statements. We begin with Bonnie Crombie of the Liberal Party.
Thank you. Hello, bonjour, North Bay. I love this province as much as I love this country, but I don't like seeing what Doug Ford is doing to it. After 7 years of Doug Ford's government, 2.5 million people don't have a family doctor, 2,000 of them right here. 13,000 people have overdosed because of the opioid crisis, and 2,000 people every day get treated in a hallway. Millions of people tell me that they can't afford their groceries and pay their rent in the same month. This is Doug Ford's Ontario today. Enough is enough. My mom always told me, Bonnie, if you don't like it, change it. So I did. I left my job as the mayor of the great city of Mississauga, and I decided to run for premier because it's time to stop the downloading, and it's time to stop the giveaway to Doug Ford's rich friends and do something for you again. And it starts with getting the basics right. And my commitment to you is that you will all have a family doctor in 4 years. I will cut your taxes, and I'll take the HST off your home heating and hydro, and we will build.
Ever faced in Donald Trump, Doug Ford decided to quit his job. Well, I'm applying for that job today. And let me tell you, I am going to be a premier on your side. I am going to fight the rising cost of everything. I'm going to hire doctors. I'm going to make sure that our highways are safe. I'm going to make sure that we have good jobs, and I am going to defend every job in every single sector. And I promise to you, I will never, ever take Northerners for granted. Thank you.
Next up is Doug Ford, leader of the Conservative Party.
Well, thank you, and I'm so thrilled to be back in this great city of North Bay. You know, folks, over the last 7 years, we've made so much progress in Northern Ontario, standing up for Northern Ontario and the people and their jobs here. Now we face down the threat of Donald Trump's tariffs that want to try to destroy our economy, want to destroy our families, but I can tell you that's not going to happen under my watch. Now, as we face Donald Trump's tariffs, we become stronger, we become more united, more resilient. I've never seen patriotism like this run so wild across our province. Northern Ontario is blessed with an abundant supply of critical minerals. And I can tell you, the world wants these critical minerals. We need to mine and process Ontario's critical minerals here. They're no good just sitting in the ground or being shipped off to China. We need to make sure we keep these jobs here because Northern Ontario has never ever been more important to protect our province and protect our country. Folks, over the next 4 years, we need a strong mandate to outlive, outlast Donald Trump's administration, and I'll make sure.
In Ontario, from a premier who's attacking them to benefit wealthy land speculators at your expense. We can invest in our communities, our fix healthcare, education, and protect the places we love. That's what Ontario Greens are fighting for. That's the fair Ontario you deserve.
Thank you, Mike Schreiner. So let's get to the questions that I was so anxious to get to. These are questions, again, prepared by FONOM, the Federation of Northern Ontario Municipalities. And that first question is about what your government would do to ensure municipalities in Northern Ontario would get their fair share of funding. What would your party do to modernize the financial relationship between the province and municipalities? And Marit Stiles, we will begin with you.
Excellent. I was ready the first time, but I'm ready to go now. Times are very tough right now for so many Ontarians. Every time you check the mail, there's a bill there that's just gone up again. Costs keep rising, and municipalities, our towns and our cities, are also feeling that strain. There was a time when your provincial government actually took care of you, right? They made sure that the roads were clear and the highways were well maintained. Conservatives and Liberals downloaded a lot of that responsibility onto municipalities to pay for. Those costs are then passed on to you, the taxpayer, and that has been bad for everyone. To make that fair, our plan is a new deal for municipalities. The province is going to take back a lot of the responsibility for paying for many things that should have always been provincial responsibilities, like mental health and road maintenance between towns, like truly affordable housing. And we're going to bring down costs for Northerners in the process. And on top of that, I want to tell you as well, we have a plan to bring down the cost of everything and to put more of your hard-earned money back in your pocket with our monthly grocery rebate. That means that every month, you're going to get money back in your pocket that you can spend on food. It's time that Northerners and northern communities had a government that was on their side and that people could actually afford the cost of living in the north again. We're losing our young people. We're losing them every day. They're leaving our communities. I hear it from you all the time. You need a government and a premier who's back on your side.
Thank you, Marit Stiles. We're going to go to Doug Ford, leader of the Conservatives, to talk about the financial relationship between the province and municipalities and how it can be modernized.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for the question. There's no party that's ever given more money, more transfers to municipalities, all 444 municipalities, than the PC government. That's the reason. We have more endorsements from mayors across this province than all three parties combined. The best way to deliver revenue to northern municipalities is by unleashing Northern Ontario's economic potential. And I'll tell you where their potential is. Their potential in the north is called the Ring of Fire. We've had great progress with our First Nations communities, Martin Falls, Webequie, Arrowland, historic agreements that are going to make sure that we build that road up to the Ring of Fire that consists of almost over $1 trillion. $1 trillion of critical minerals that the world wants, the U.S. wants. You know, as Donald Trump's tariffs are coming at us, and it doesn't matter if it happens tomorrow, next month, or in a year, I can tell you Northern Ontario plays a critical role in protecting our province and protecting our country. Thank you.
Mike Schreiner of the Green Party.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not quite sure which mayors Mr. Ford's talking about, because when I talk to mayors and councillors, all they talk to me about is the crushing financial burden that's been downloaded onto their backs by the PC government. I talk to especially mayors in rural and northern communities who say it is just not fair that we're struggling to keep roads and bridges open when the Premier is spending $2.2 billion on a mega spa in downtown Toronto, tens of billions of dollars putting a tunnel under the 401, or building Highway 413, which isn't needed because we have a good highway next to it. Meanwhile, Northern Ontario, you're looking for, can we just, have a divided highway 11 and 17? Can we finish Highway 69? Can we reverse the downloading of housing and shelter costs onto our backs? Those things are leading, oftentimes in rural and northern communities, to double-digit property tax increases. I call them the Ford government property tax increase. The Ontario Greens would provide municipalities with dedicated, predictable funding, $28 billion over the next 4 years, so we can build homes you can afford, so we can ensure people are housed, we can ensure that your roads and bridges stay open without these double-digit tax increases brought on by the provincial government.
Bonnie Crombie of the Liberals.
Thank you. Well, I think the question originally was about your fiscal framework, and I know the municipal leaders are really concerned about that. And having been there and worn that hat, I know the impact that the downloading from the province makes. And I know that you want to build thriving communities and you want to stop the mental health, the homelessness crisis, the addiction crisis, but it's been downloaded onto the municipal taxpayer. I want to be sure that you have the sustainable funding that you need to keep your local roads open, the ability to build supportive housing with wraparound services, and to keep the roads open so that we can move those goods and services and get our kids to school. We have to upload. We have to upload all those healthcare issues, all those social issues that have been downloaded by Doug Ford and his government and put onto your taxpayer to help you make ends meet, to help you make your tax dollars go further so you can do what you were intended to do and let the province take on our responsibilities. I'm going to make your life more affordable for everyone here. Of course, you've heard me say we're going to cut middle income taxes, we're going to take the HST off your home heating and hydro, and we're going to double ODSP just to make your life a little more affordable. And we're going to upload all those costs that have been downloaded by the province to ensure that you can run your municipalities and that you don't have to have those large tax increases we know mayors right across this province have been suffering from. With respect to your industries, we're going to help them. We're going to support them. We're going to ensure that they have the ability to modernize. We're going to give them support through R&D and through innovation, both your forestry sector and your mining sector, because we need to protect those jobs. We're at risk of losing 500,000 jobs because of a tariff war. Can you imagine this Premier chose this time to hold an election when he should be at his desk working hard to fight for us and to fight for our jobs, but he only wants to protect one job, and that's his own.
Thank you, Bonnie Crombie. We're going to just open things up for just a few minutes because we started a little late, but I just want to expand this conversation about money, the money to municipalities, and also the cost of living and what needs to change. With cost of living top of mind for so many Ontarians, including in the north, what would your government do to help Ontarians, starting with, again, Marit Stiles, but then we'll open it up if anyone else wants to jump in, by all means.
Sure. I mean, as I said, look, we've seen under the Ford Conservatives, under Doug Ford's government, costs go through the roof. I mean, I was just looking at it today, and I think rent in Timmins has increased 31% under Doug Ford and his Conservative government. In North Bay, it's up 36%, right here in North Bay. In Thunder Bay, 40%. So Doug Ford, he stands here and he says that he's going to unleash the economic potential of Ontario. Where is that happening? It is not happening here.
Mr. Ford, would you like to address that?
Cannot afford to live like this anymore.
Well, I'm the only one on stage that has never raised a tax. We've never downloaded anything. We've uploaded to the province.
To do it.
I'm
That's
the only
because of the
person that's
downloading.
not in favor of the carbon tax. We have Bonnie Crombie as the queen of the carbon tax. We have Marit Stiles that doesn't believe in mining at all, along with Mr. Shiner here. They don't believe in economic development. All of them believe
There
in
you
one
go
thing.
again.
They
There
believe
you go
in
again.
Let Mr.
raising
Ford speak.
taxes. They have a proven record. Bonnie Crombie as mayor raised taxes every single year. And her city shrunk. The only city in Ontario that actually shrunk over a population boom. Unheard of.
Let's
I
go
don't
to
raise
Bonnie Crombie, though,
taxes.
to
Why
address
don't we
that.
go to
Go ahead,
Money
Bonnie
back in
Crombie.
your pocket.
Why don't we do that? Because of course, Doug, you're making up lies again. And we all know that. You have the highest debt and the highest deficit and the largest government on record.
Well, we
Because of you,
inherited from
jobs
you.
are leaving this province. Our unemployment rate, and we know it right here, is the highest in a decade. Our youth unemployment is at 17.1%. I have a plan to get our young people 40,000 new jobs through apprenticeships, through co-op programs, through internships, not like this man does. Jobs are leaving this province. Construction jobs went to Alberta and to BC because they're building homes. Manufacturing jobs have left this province because you haven't built in incentives. You haven't built up our industries because you're not interested in protecting jobs.
Bonnie Crombie, we're going to
Cities
just
need a
let,
new-
because
Cities need a new deal, and that's what they'll get under Bonnie Crombie, because I know how municipalities
long
are
enough under
suffering
the previous
under the
government.
downloading of this man. Everything has been
I mean,
downloaded,
we
mental
waited,
health,
they waited
healthcare.
years.
let's go to Mike Schreiner for a moment here.
Thank you, Marcus. You know what? Mr. Ford promised a middle tax cut 7 years ago, hasn't delivered it. The Ontario Greens will lower taxes for people earning under $65,000 a year and families under $100,000 a year, putting $1,700 back in your pocket. So you can just pay for the basics that have gotten out of control with the Ford government. Ontario's housing prices are some of the highest in the world. Our housing starts are the lowest in Canada. I've put forward solutions to legalize building homes that people can afford in the communities they know and love. The Premier has said no. We've put forward a first-time homebuyers plan to save you up to $150,000 on your housing costs. Premier says no. We've said we'll protect renters. The Premier has said no. We said we'll build deeply affordable nonprofit and co-op housing again.
Mike
which
Schreiner, we're
hasn't
going to get to
happened in
housing.
decades. The Premier has said no to all those affordability solutions.
We're going to get to housing in just a moment, but Doug Ford, did you want to have a quick comment in response to this?
Yeah, I'd love to have a comment. You know, I've heard the comments about jobs. Well, under the Liberals and NDP, propped up by the NDP, 300,000 jobs were lost in this province. Today, there's over 850,000 more people bringing home a paycheck, a bigger paycheck, and a better job. Just last year alone, the manufacturers of this province, the companies of this province, actually created over 200,000 jobs.
we're down
Because we've
manufacturing
created
jobs.
the environment and
They're leaving
conditions
the province.
by
Those
reducing
aren't
the
actual
burden by
facts.
$8 billion. We're the only government that's actually putting money back into people's pockets. Unlike the three on the stage here with me,
Sorry.
they would get rid of the license fee and put it back on the back of your cars. They'd bring back the tolls.
Rent
They'd
is up
increase gas by
38%.
10.7
Thank
cents.
you,
They
Doug.
believe in one thing: tax the people to death.
Oh,
I'll never raise the tax. I never will. We have seen
We've had
again
7 years.
850,000
7
more
years.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. We're just going to move on.
that weren't employed
Oh.
under the Liberals.
Thank you.
And under the
Hard and
NDP.
fast with the rules.
And, sorry, you weren't in the government at that time, but Mike, you'd pop them up too. You love taxes.
I'd lower your taxes.
Wait, no,
I'm the guy talking about lowering taxes.
we do need to
Mike-
move
Mike's
on.
actually not a bad guy. I like him.
You're just
He
download.
just likes taxing people.
Just
that's all.
download to
Let's move
municipalities.
on
That's
to the
why
next
you don't-
question. We've got a timeline we've got to follow here. And next topic is housing, which you've already talked a bit about, Mr. Schreiner. Issue across the country. The increasing cost of living, the lack of affordable housing means more people are priced out of home ownership and many can't afford rent. The provincial government used to be responsible for social housing, but that was downloaded to municipalities in the 1990s. Would your party consider taking the issue of social housing off the backs of municipalities and make it a provincial responsibility? This time we're going to start with Doug Ford.
Well, we've done more for housing than any government. We've cut the red tape, we've cut regulations. And as the mayor of Mississauga, she's increased taxes. The only municipality in the province, as I said, that actually shrunk because of her high taxes, irresponsible taxes on the backs of people. We're cutting red tape to make sure we can get shovels in the ground. And for the folks, homeless folks, we put over $1.4 billion to get them shelter, to give them a lift up, rather than be stuck on the streets. Folks, we're going to continue cutting red tape, by the way, that all three of these parties always voted against in the legislature. They don't believe it. They say we want to build. They don't believe in building. Bonnie Crombie had the lowest builds in all of Ontario. And Mr. Schreiner, he won't cut down a dandelion to put the shovels in the ground. He just won't do it. And Mara, you don't believe in building. You vote against us on every single bill. You know, I see my friend Vic Fideli in there. He's beside me in the house. And he just keeps going in my ear saying, I can't believe these people. All they want to do is tax and build nothing and then criticize. We're a party of action. We're going to continue building, setting record numbers. We're the ones who led right across the country getting rid of the HST on rental-built housing. So we're going to continue lowering the cost. And I'd love to see the municipalities chop out the delivery charges and making sure they put money back into people's pockets. In the DCs alone in Mississauga are $120,000 by the time you add up all the taxes. They don't want to build. They want to tax people to death. That's what they believe in. I don't believe in taxes.
Thank you, Doug Ford. Next up is Mike Schreiner of the Green Party. And again, the question from FONOM is, would your party consider taking the issue of social housing off the backs of municipalities and make it a provincial responsibility?
To answer your question, Markus, yes, absolutely. We have that costed out in our Affordable Communities Plan. Municipalities spent almost $2.1 billion last year addressing housing and homelessness. The provincial government hardly added anything to that. Let's look at the record over the last 7 years. Housing starts are at an all-time low in Ontario. Housing prices are at an all-time high in Ontario. Why is that? Most of the government's housing plans have been, how do we unlock profits for wealthy land speculators instead of how do we unlock affordable homes that people can afford? The result of their housing record is we have a whole generation of young people wondering if they'll ever be able to afford a home. We live in a province where nowhere in this province can a minimum wage worker working full-time afford average monthly rent. And now we have over 81,000 people experiencing homelessness right now in Ontario. Can you imagine that? So what would the Ontario Greens do? We're going to fight for generational fairness. Our plan to build for first-time home buyers would remove development charges and other fees to save up to $150,000 on a new starter home. We would remove the red tape that would enable you to build fourplexes and 4 stories in neighborhoods across the province so we can build homes people can afford, where we already have infrastructure, in the communities they love, close to their families, close to where they work. We would bring back protections for renters, and we would get government back into building deeply affordable homes again. We need to build 310 deeply affordable nonprofit co-op and permanent supportive homes with wraparound mental health and addiction supports. 93% of the deeply affordable homes built in Ontario were built before 1995, and the last 2 governments have failed to change that. Ontario Greens will.
Thank you, Mike Schreiner. Up next is Bonnie Crombie about whether the province should be responsible for social housing.
So, Premier, you know, you talk a good tale and you sound kind of folksy and charming, but none of what you're saying is actually true. Because you told us 7 years ago you would end hallway health care. It's gotten twice as bad. You said you'd cut our taxes, but you didn't do that either. You didn't get it done. And you said you'd build 1.5 million homes. You didn't get that done either. Our construction workers are going to Alberta and BC where they're eating our lunch. And so is Quebec, for that matter. We built more homes in 1955 than we're building here today. In fact, we're not meeting 50% of our targets. That's terrible. Children are losing the dream of owning their home. I have 3 kids. 2 of them got married this summer, and both of them want to start a family. And they said, Mom, what are we going to do? We can't put money away because we can barely afford our rent. How are we going to afford that home? So I said to my team, we've got to lower the cost of building. We've got to reduce the price of a home. But yet we've got to make municipalities whole, because I know a lot about making municipalities whole as well. You got to keep their taxes low, because this government, they just downloaded everything to the municipalities. And so, of course, municipalities, so many of them have double-digit tax increases. My plan is to cut those hidden taxes at the end. They're called development charges, and we would get rid of them entirely. That'll lower the cost of building, it'll lower the price to the purchaser, and I have a fund called the Better Communities Fund that will make the municipalities whole as well. We're going to scrap the land transfer tax too, for seniors, for first-time home buyers, and also for not-for-profits. Our plan will save you $170,000 on a home and another $13,000 once we scrap the LTT. I want to make home building cheaper. I want your kids and mine to have a home again, because under Doug Ford's Ontario, there is no home building happening, and our children can't afford their rent, let alone put money aside to one day, again, hope that they can buy their own home.
Thank you, Bonnie Crombie. And finally, Mark Stiles of the NDP about social housing being a provincial responsibility.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Markus. And let's take a moment here to remember how we got into this place that we're in, right? Because back, as you said, in the 90s, it was Liberal governments at the federal level and provincial governments at the provincial conservative governments that canceled the affordable building of homes, the building of truly, deeply, permanently affordable homes that we used to do in this province. Now, Ontario is the only province in Canada that doesn't already build those homes. We are absolutely going to start building again. And I am so proud of our Homes Ontario plan, because we are committed to building 1.5 million truly, deeply, permanently affordable homes in the province of Ontario over 10 years. And that, by the way, includes 60,000 supportive housing units, which is what we're going to need to make sure that we can move people out of those encampments and out of homelessness. But look, the other question I want to ask people is, where are the houses? Where are the homes that Doug Ford said he was going to build? Where are the homes, Doug? Because they're not in our communities. They're not in northern communities. They're not anywhere in Ontario right now. He has not done a dang thing about it. That is the truth. And now there's a whole generation of young people who cannot even imagine buying a home and can't even find an affordable rental home. We're going to build those homes, and not only are we going to do that, but we are going to build those homes with lumber from right here in Northern Ontario. We are going to tariff-proof our economy long-term by buying Ontario and building Ontario. 7 years of this government, housing costs are through the roof. It is time that you had a government that was on your side.
We will open this up for a discussion for the next 2 or 3 minutes. Doug Ford, we're going to start with you about how your party plans to address and provide for more affordable housing.
Well, I'll tell you how. It's very simple. We're going to protect the people of Ontario. And how you build more homes, you protect businesses, you protect their jobs against Donald Trump's tariffs.
Oh my gosh.
You know, we heard from Bonnie Crombie about the DCs. You know, it wasn't too long ago, I went out there and said, let's cut the DCs by 50%. Not all, just by 50%. You had to pull Bonnie Crombie off the ceiling. She was out in front of the media saying, we can't afford to get rid of the DCs, the land transfer tax. You know, something's very simple. You protect the economy, you protect the people's jobs. Yeah. They're going to have an opportunity to go out there
Mark
and
Stiles
buy
would
a home.
Mark Stiles.
I'd
like Mark Stiles to go
You
first.
have a chance, because every business
Mr. Ford.
will close down and leave this province.
Mr. Ford, we'll let Mark Stiles speak to this.
You have not answered the question, because
Yes.
the truth is, there are no homes being built in Ontario.
There are
right?
not.
Housing starts are lower than they've been since the 50s. That's the truth, under his government. And so actually, at the end of the day, Doug, people are not, they don't have any options out there. You talk about Donald Trump, you have shown us who you are. You say one thing in front of the public like this, and you go to say another thing behind closed doors every single time. You did that on the Greenbelt. You lied to Ontarians, and you're lying to them now about homes and housing. But you know what? They don't believe you, because they're living the reality of it right now. They're living it. They know that they can't find an affordable home. They know that young people know that they can never even imagine owning a home in the province of Ontario. Ontario has become a have-not province in Canada.
Right.
We are falling so very far behind, Doug.
Let Bonnie
and you have
Crombie-
not built a single
Bonnie
home.
Crombie would like to speak.
Absolutely right. You fly off in the middle of an election for photo ops in Washington with low-level advisors. What's the point? Why'd you call the election? We have a housing crisis here. We're at a tipping point. Do you know there are 200,000 people who don't have a home, who are homeless, who are living in your parks or living in encampments. We need a strategy for the North that allows you, gives you the capital that you need dedicated towards building housing for people who are homeless, to get them out of encampments. But let's ensure that you have those wraparound services that you need, that they need, so they have the treatment, so they have access to the treatment that they need to get them off their addictions. But the North in particular needs a specific fund of capital, a specific strategy to help you build housing not only that is affordable, but supportive housing for those that need it.
I want to let Mike Schreiner have a quick word before we move on to the next question. Go ahead, Mr. Schreiner.
This Premier, Mr. Ford, has said no to every housing solution that works for people. Why? Because the interests of wealthy land speculators are more important to this government than you, the people of Ontario, struggling just to put a roof over your head. And to play politics with tariffs at a time when we should all be working across party lines, showing street through unity to push back against Donald Trump, to distract from the failure to actually build homes and the $8.3 billion Greenbelt scandal, I believe is highly irresponsible. I'm ready to work with all of us up here.
Thanks, Mike.
Every single one of us up here to stand united against Trump's tariffs.
That's right.
And at the same time, build homes, fix healthcare, fix education, and ensure we have a strong economy.
Houses should be about
We need
families.
a wartime effort. Everyone
Houses-
working together to
Houses
solve
should
the
be
housing
about
crisis.
families, not speculators, not
Doug Ford,
developers.
we'll give you
That's what
20
families
seconds
need.
to wrap up. Doug Ford.
You know, we put the Building Faster Fund that Mississauga didn't meet, but everyone else met around the area.
You always have an
We
excuse,
put $3 billion towards infrastructure to build 160,000 more homes.
Where are they,
They
Doug? Where are
voted
they?
against
Didn't
it.
get built.
All three
Where are
parties
they?
voted against it.
It's because it
Where are
doesn't
they?
work.
But a
We're
majority
making
government
sure
where's
we
the
cut
housing,
red
Doug?
tape and regulations.
1.5
All three
million
parties
homes. You didn't get it
voted
done.
against it. And honestly, with all due respect, Bonnie, you should be the last one speaking about building homes. You had the lowest builds in all
I
of
am
Ontario.
so proud of
You
my
know?
city and my
Oh
record.
my
Doug,
We're gonna
Doug Ford, I'll
stop.
take my
I'll
record
tell you,
over yours any day.
Mississauga is not proud
Your
of you.
record
I'll
is a
tell you that
disaster.
right
You know
now.
what? Look at this.
Stop,
Look at
please.
this.
Thank you.
It's outrageous, these two. Fighting over, who's built the least housing in Ontario at a time when we have a housing and homelessness crisis in
We
the
need a
province.
wartime effort.
We are going to
work
move on to
together.
the next topic. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Next topic, next question is about the forest industry. And the industry that's had to deal with tariffs and consolidation. Meantime, we've seen billions of dollars of investment to the electric vehicle and battery manufacturing sectors in Southern Ontario. The question from FONOM, what will your government do to see that kind of investment in the forest industry in Northern Ontario? Mike Schreiner, we begin with you.
Yeah, thanks, Marcus. This is such a critically important question. 137,000 people working in the forestry sector. And the 3 plants that have closed or been idled in Northern Ontario, Espanola, Terrace Bay, and Thessalon, shows you the dire situation our forestry sector is in. We need a government that's going to step up, I think, first of all, by calling a task force together to talk about how we can modernize and upgrade our forestry sector. We need modern plants, and we need to make sure those plants are in a position to take advantage of the huge opportunities in the fast-growing, emerging green economy. We need to be building mass timber buildings to maximize the value of our forests. We need to have a biomass strategy that shows how our forest industry can be a part of generating clean electricity in Ontario. We need our forestry sector to also have biomass as part of thermal heating solutions as part of a green economy. We need to ensure that our workers have the training they need to be the best forestry workers in the entire world. That's the kind of focus we need to ensure the sustainability of the industry and the prosperity for Northern Ontario.
Bonnie Crombie, what will your government do to see that kind of investment into the forest
Thanks.
industry?
And I think Mike says a few really important things here. I really do, and how the forest industry can contribute to our climate goals, and how we can produce green power and biomass for not only our homes, but for our mining industry as well. So the question was about the EV industry, and all our eggs, all the Doug Ford eggs went into the EV basket. So we didn't diversify our trade or our trading partner. We didn't build other strong sectors, our mineral sector, because nothing's being done up in the Ring of Fire. Nothing. You said you'd get that done. You said you'd get on a bulldozer and do it. You didn't get it done. But our forestry industry is at a critical juncture right now. We see the pulp and paper mills, as Mike mentioned, in Espanola and Thessalon and Terrace Bay, losing thousands and thousands of jobs, and we need to revitalize them through innovation, through R&D, and we need to help diversify markets, whether in the South by building more homes, like we'd all like to do. We need that wartime effort to come together to build homes, whether across borders, even our own provincial borders. We need to break down trade barriers with other provinces and look for markets abroad. We've put all our eggs in the U.S. basket into one industry. Doug, you failed to diversify our economy. The other sectors are hurting. What's the strategy? Why haven't you been doing that for 7 years? You knew this reckoning was coming. You were cheering on for this president to win. Look what he's going to do. A $7.7 billion industry is forestry. Imagine 25% tariffs taking away $2 billion. It's heartbreaking, but it is an opportunity to recalibrate, modernize the industry through R&D and innovation, and look for new partners, diversify our supply chains as well. There's a lot that can be done to protect those jobs, grow them, build new skilled labor around the new industries, and I'm very hopeful. We're not only going to protect jobs, but we're going to create new ones, because this is a moment.
That is
we
2
can
minutes.
recalibrate.
Thank you, Thank you, Bonnie Crombie. Marit Stiles is next
Thanks, Mark.
on the forest industry and the investment into the forest
Well,
industry.
listen, I thank you so much for that. And I spent a lot of time in the north listening to forestry workers. Last year, I was on a trip up along the North Shore, hearing from people in communities like Schwabe and Nipigon and Terrace Bay, the steel workers there who have seen their pulp mill shuttered. Yep. And that was and should be the lifeblood of that community and is essential to forestry in this region. When we came to Doug Ford, those workers, the small business owners, the mayors, and we came to get that mill reopened again and get some support, he folded like a cheap suit, right? Workers were on their own. And he can say all he wants to about working for workers or industry, but that has been Doug Ford's record, his track record. And we've seen it in Thessalon, we've seen it in Espanola, and we have seen it in Terrace Bay. I do not fight this battle alone, right? Lise Vaugeois, MPP up there, fighting like hell for Terrace Bay Mill every single day on behalf of those workers. Guy Bourgoin, who comes out of Kapuskasing, out of the forestry sector, qui nous vient du secteur forestier à Kapuskasing. He was down in Washington during the softwood lumber dispute, fighting for those jobs right there in Washington. And as Premier, I'm not only going to fight for those jobs because somebody does need to. I want to grow the sector. I want to create more opportunities. I'm going to launch a Buy Ontario, Build Ontario campaign to promote Ontario goods, to diversify around the world, including softwood lumber and pulp. We're going to make sure that what happened in Terrace Bay and Thessalon and Espanola and other communities like it under Doug Ford's watch and under the previous Liberal government too never happens again in Northern Ontario. If you can take one thing away from tonight, make it be this: we are on your side, and I will fight for that industry.
Doug Ford of the Conservatives on investment into forestry.
Well, Ontario forest sector is at ground zero when it comes to the fight against these tariffs. For decades, Northern Ontario's forestry workers have brunt these tariffs, and I can tell you, just since we've been in office, since 2018, there's been over $400 million of new investments in Ontario's forestry sector. Just talk to the sector, ask them who they support. There's a reason why they'll be supporting us. That's creating over 3,500 new jobs. We've invested nearly over $60 million this year alone to build and maintain forestry, roads, enable businesses and operations and industries. But do you know what's common, folks? All three of them voted against this. They come up here and they talk a good story, but when they're at Queen's Park, they vote against it. Biomass has a ton of new uses, including natural gas, 3D printing, and mass timber products. We're providing funding to mills and facilities to buy new equipment, to retain workers, and retool operations. Mass timber is also a huge opportunity. That's why we're turning to our forestry partners in Ontario to build more homes. We've passed new regulations that they voted against to allow timber buildings so we can use Ontario to build Ontario homes. But they came up here talking timber, but they voted against that. They say one thing on the debate, when they're in Queen's Park, they say something else. It's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. They flip back and forth. So we're going to continue reducing the burden. We're going to stick up for the forestry industry. And the Liberals abandoned the forestry sector. I'll never forget what they said. Northern Ontario is a no man's land. Do you still agree, Bonnie, that it's a no man's land? I'm sure you do, because that's what they believe, and they vote against everything when it comes to the forestry sector. We're going to support the forestry sector. We're going to protect them against Donald Trump's tariffs. We're going to protect their families, their jobs, and their communities.
That is 2 minutes. Thank you, Doug Ford. We'll open it up for a brief discussion on the forest industry, starting with Mike Schreiner. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Ford, will you actually work with us and make a commitment today to make the investment in modernizing the mills that are closed?
That's right.
Like, I think the workers in forestry and in the mills deserve a commitment from you today. Are you going to help reopen these mills? Are you going to make the investment to modernize the industry? Are you going to take advantage of biomass in the green economy? Are you going to change the building codes to make mass timber building easier and faster to do? You say like, hey,
Let's
these
let
guys
him
don't
answer those
always-
questions.
Always vote with us. Well, I don't vote for things that don't work.
Doug Ford.
Mills are closed.
They're
Well,
closed.
maybe you're a little confused because we already passed that for mass timber. I was at the site. So maybe you got to catch up a little bit on what we've done. And by the way, just to remind you, you voted against that. And so did the other two parties. We're going to make sure we diversify everything from 3D printing to mass timber to biomass, to make sure that we can get fuel out of the biomass.
Has it been 7 years of this,
We're
though,
going
Doug?
to continue working with the
Where have you
forestry
been for
sector.
7 years?
Mark Stiles, what do you want to say
Continue
specifically about
to
the
work
forest
with the,
industry?
forest sector to protect them and protect
Mark
their
Stiles.
Yeah, Doug, but where have you been for 7 years? Well, mills are closing. You know, and I look at it, I talk to people up north, and people have said to me, it's like Doug Ford sees our industries like monopoly pieces that he can just move around on a board. That's not how it works. One mill closes, it has huge economic impact, and these are the very communities that those workers built. So it isn't just something you can move around. You do not understand the industry, and you've never made an effort to understand the industry. But that's, you know, the story of Doug Ford in Northern Ontario, right? You've let Northern Ontario down every time in favor of your insider friends, of big developers down south, right? People in other sectors see it too, because you changed the rules on the Ontario line contract so that those jobs didn't go to Thunder Bay, right? They went down to the south, to the United States, under your government. 7 years you have let Ontario Northern jobs down, and you keep doing it, and you've never tried to understand the sector.
So I
We'll
think
let
so-
Bonnie Crombie just speak for a quick
Yeah,
moment.
I haven't had this opportunity after you. I'm going to invite you canoeing and kayaking so you too can explore the beautiful North, Premier. It's beautiful up here. You're claiming you've created 3,500 jobs. Does anyone have one of those 3,500 jobs? Because I don't think they exist. You tell a great tale, Premier, but the reality is you don't do what you say, and it didn't get done. You can't get it done. You've been saying the same thing for 7 years. You put over $10 billion, with a B, dollars into the EV industry. How much money has gone into the north? How much money has gone into northern roads, into northern sectors, northern communities? You're also planning on spending $150 billion on a fantasy tunnel under the 401 and a 403. Where's the money for the roads in the north? Where's the money for the jobs? What did you do to diversify the trading sectors here? Did you break down interprovincial trade barriers so our goods, our lumber, our pulp, our biomass, whatever it might be, structural panels, can move easily, seamlessly across provincial borders?
You know what, just start with
you didn't
actually
get it
saving
done.
the jobs that we're losing right now.
You didn't get
How
it
about
done.
that?
Let's hear
Let's
from
go
Doug
to Terrace
Ford
Mill.
on those issues. Go ahead.
7 years to
Let's-
get
let's
it done,
reopen the
Doug.
terrace
7
thing
years.
now.
Let's hear from Doug Ford.
Well, first of all, thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. You know, I find it so ironic standing up here. Bonnie Crombie
There you go.
might have went up north in the last 7 years, maybe 2 times. I've been up hundreds of times into factories, into forestry sectors, and we had an event from the forestry sector. I didn't see any of them. There's a reason why they support the PC government, because we've invested over $400 million, creating over 3,500 jobs. We've created the conditions in the environment for the forestry
Talk to the
sector
steel
to
workers in
thrive
Terrace
and
Bay,
prosper and
Doug.
grow.
Talk to the steel
But
workers in
everything we
Terrace
do
Bay.
10
for the
billion
forestry
for each
sector,
batteries.
All right.
10.
all 3 parties vote against us.
Right.
Everyone's spoken on this issue. We're going to move to the next question, which is about feeling safe in our northern communities. There are people struggling with addictions, many with mental health challenges, living rough. If elected, would you open the Mental Health Act and the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act to recognize addiction as a substance use disorder? And this time we start with Bonnie Crombie.
Yes, I would. This is an issue that's really personal for me, and don't know if many of you have heard me sharing this story, but I've been affected by mental health and addiction. My biological father, he left us when I was very young, and I hadn't seen him in decades, in fact, because he had a very serious addiction issue. And it took a real toll on our family, and I grew up with my mom and my grandparents in a rooming house and didn't have kind of a normal, whatever that is, upbringing until my mom remarried and we moved to Cogeco. But I saw the stress it put us under and how it puts many people under, and I was grateful for the Seton House, a men's shelter in Toronto that took him in and provided him with the care and the services that he needed. But we need shelters like that, not just in Toronto and in Ottawa and Mississauga. We need them in Temiskaming and in Cochrane and right here as well. Sudbury and Thunder Bay have some of the highest opioid uses in the country. We need to get a handle on that, and we need a specific strategy to deal with it. We need a coordinated strategy with proper funding behind it, not something that's going to open in years' time, that's a drop in the bucket. I was the chair of the mayor's groups, and we'd get together and brainstorm who's doing what that works to help people with mental health and addiction issues. You know, kudos to one mayor, Josh Morgan in London, who built supportive housing that had the wraparound services, and another mayor in Kitchener, Barry Verbanovich, who built tiny homes, and other ones modular homes, other one who needed a detox clinic, and he put a plea out, please, I just need $2 million in Belleville. But their pleas go unanswered. This is a provincial issue. It's being downloaded to the municipalities. It needs to be coordinated by the province, and there has to be proper funding behind it. And yes, of course, we would open up the Health Act to ensure that anyone suffering from mental health and addiction gets the care and gets the treatment they need. There isn't
Thank you, Bonnie
room
Crombie.
for-
That's 2 minutes. Marit Stiles, would you open the Mental Health Act and the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act to recognize addiction as a substance use disorder?
Look, I don't need to tell anybody who's watching probably that addiction and mental health is a crisis that is tearing through our province and our communities, and particularly see it here in Northern Ontario. Every time I go by that corner in Sudbury where Denise Sundell put up the white cross for her son Miles, and there are more crosses every time I go by. And we know that. We know that there's hundreds of people every day who are dying because of addiction, and we know that it is an issue that has affected so many families, everybody's family. On this issue, I got to tell you, my priority is taking care of people. Some of the people on this stage are going to want to just throw people into jail, get people some help, but I want to get people help with their addiction. Right? These are our sons, our daughters, our fathers, our brothers. After 7 years of Doug Ford, we've had a lot of talk. Right? We've had a lot of talk, but it has never been worse. You do not take away resources and supports that people need in a crisis without somehow replacing it with more and with better. And I got to tell you, Doug Ford, under his government, we have seen northern communities pitted against each other, where every community in the north really does deserve wraparound services. Look, that means investing in community mental health supports, right? It means making sure that there's mental health support in our schools, which is a commitment I am making, that at least one mental health professional will be in every school, because you know what? The kids are not all right, okay? And it means ensuring that we also address the primary care situation, the crisis in our province. 2.5 million Ontarians don't have a family doctor. We got to get those doctors up and running, and I'm going to be hiring 350 doctors in Northern Ontario alone and setting up a Northern Command Centre to coordinate all of this. We need to lead with empathy, but also with evidence, something that this government has failed to do.
Doug Ford, would your government open the Mental Health Act and Controlled Drugs and Substances Act to recognize addiction as a substance use disorder?
Well, part of our plan to protect Ontario, we're cleaning up the streets. That's first and foremost. We shut down drug injection sites near schools and daycares. I know no one wants a drug addiction site beside a school or a daycare. But my three folks here on the stage, they voted against that. They believe we should have safe injection sites right beside the schools. Actually, you did.
No, we didn't.
Instead, we're investing $530 million in 27 new, we call them heart hubs, that will get people into detox, get them shelter, give them an opportunity to find employment. You know, folks, I understand when it comes to drug addiction, alcohol addiction. I've seen it. I've seen it firsthand. People need support. These hubs are connecting people with employment and support services. We're also giving municipalities new tools to dismantle encampments. And I'll tell you mentioned a couple mayors there. It was great to see Mayor Morgan leading the way when he was down in Washington with me, with Mayor Barry from Kitchener. And I got a call from Mayor Ellis in Belleville thanking me over and over again for them getting a heart hub. They're getting more money. They're getting proper help outside of safe supply. That, do you believe it or not, the federal government's the largest drug dealer in this country. You can go in and get heroin, you can get anything, and they support it. You can't give, it's like giving a gambler $1,000 and telling them to go into the casino, or an alcoholic, give them an LCBO card to go into the LCBO and buy all the booze they want. They believe in it, I don't. I believe in supporting people and giving them help.
Mike Schreiner of the Green Party.
No, you don't.
So Markus, what I won't do, and I want to be really clear about this, what I won't do is throw people in jail
Right.
who are experiencing homelessness, who are experiencing mental health and addiction crises. Like, we're a caring society in Ontario. I know the people of Ontario care about their neighbors. And to actually introduce legislation to say that people are neighbors, sons and daughters, aunts and uncles, mums and dads, who are experiencing homelessness and addiction crisis, so we throw them in jail? Like, that's not the kind of Ontario I want to live in. I want us to address the crisis of caring by providing people with the supports they need.
That's right.
Right now, Northern Ontario is experiencing far more overdose deaths than Southern Ontario. Over 200% increase in Timmins, 185% increase in overdose deaths in Sudbury. And they're begging for a consumption and treatment site to help people. You know, if we really want to help people, let's house them. It costs $30,000 a month to have somebody in hospital. It costs $10,000 a month to have somebody in jail. It costs $4,000 a month to have somebody in social housing. That's why the Ontario Greens are committed to building 60,000 permanent supportive homes with wraparound mental health, addictions, employment, and other supports. People need housing and health care, not jail. Let's be clear about that, okay? And I also think it is so important that we actually increase funding for mental health supports, community-based mental health supports. I can't tell you how many community health, mental health services I see people actually having to lay off staff because they haven't had enough funding to keep up with inflation. And that's why we're committing to investing $2 billion over the next 4 years to actually have the treatment and help
2 minutes.
and support people need.
Can I jump in?
We're going to open this up for a discussion just because I'd like to broaden it a bit because addictions is just one element that's putting stress on the healthcare system. We've got a doctor shortage, long wait lists in emergency rooms. Bonnie Crombie, what's your prescription to improve healthcare in Ontario?
Prescription is to ensure that everyone has a family doctor in the next 4 years, and that'll reduce our wait times in hospitals. But there is so much more to say on this issue as well, because homelessness in the north has gone up over 200% in the 7 years that he has been premier. Picking people up the streets, Premier, and putting them where? Honestly, where? Where there is no plan to put these people, move them along to form another encampment somewhere else. There is no spaces for people who want treatment to recover from their addiction. The lineups are years long right now, unless you want to pay out of pocket, and even that is costly and not available to most people. There is no plan. You cut $350 million from our healthcare plan. Meanwhile, 13,000 people overdosed on opioids. You know what the communities need here in the north? Mobile crisis units to get there sooner. But yes, we need more doctors, and since you want me to talk about that, I'm happy to.
And let's go
because
to
I have a
Mark's.
plan that will put $3 billion
maybe we can,
on the table to ensure that
yeah.
you have. We've hired 3,100 doctors.
Mark
to be
Stiles.
family
So
doctor.
listen, thank you for that because it is really important. And I think, we can't separate these two things, right? Lots of people, the first opportunity they're going to get and the first place they would normally go to talk about whatever mental health challenges they're facing or addiction challenges would normally be your primary care, your family doctor. People don't have a family doctor. 177,000 people in Northern Ontario do not have a family doctor right now. And more than that, we are seeing our smaller hospitals in particular hemorrhaging dollars all the time, close to closing, emergency rooms closed, because we are have an enormous shortage of other healthcare workers, including nurses, I have to say, because hospitals are having to spend more money hiring private nursing agencies than actually being able to hire and keep our nurses. Now, Doug Ford, I would say, look, the Liberals created the hallway healthcare crisis, right? Doug Ford and his government came in and poured gasoline all over that situation. Neither of these governments did anything to actually address the healthcare short issues, crisis, and particularly the family doctor shortage in Northern Ontario or anywhere. So we need to take a really significant step forward, and these guys cannot be trusted to do that.
Doug Ford, I'll let you have a chance to respond.
Well, thank you so much. There's no government in the history of this country, not just the province,
Oh, my
that has invested $3.8 billion into mental health and addiction. We have Dr. Michael Tobolo leading the way. He's doing an incredible job. But the fact is, we've added over 400 new treatment beds across the province. When it comes to hiring doctors and nurses, we've hired 15,000 new doctors. We're paying for their tuition. We're making sure there's over 100,000 new nurses registered in Ontario, 30,000 in the schools. But guess how we pay for that? Guess how we pay for the $50 billion in the 50 sites that we're building new hospitals all across the province? Or in addition, you do it by protecting the economy. The economy is what pays for hospitals, healthcare, schools, and opportunities.
No equipment,
There's never been more
nurses,
investment
more
in
importantly, no
healthcare
nurses.
than what we've done, over $33 billion more than the previous government, building new medical schools, adding more seats. Under the Liberals, they got rid of the seats. We're adding more seats right here in the north.
Let's have
We're
Mike
adding
Schreiner
more
have
seats.
just a few seconds to wrap things
Yeah,
up here.
let's just be honest with people. Ontario has the lowest per capita funding for healthcare any province in the country. It would take an additional $12 billion just to get us to the provincial, the national average among provinces. The Premier talks about money going into mental health. That's over 10 years. People need mental health services right now. Not like 10 years from now. Like literally, Canadian mental health associations across the province are having to lay off staff.
That's right.
Because they didn't get enough funding at a time when we're facing a mental health crisis. We have to have an honest conversation about the investments that are needed. And yes, we need a strong economy to do that. And yet, unemployment's the highest level in Ontario.
We're going to leave it there.
Over
We're going to
a
leave. We
decade.
have to move on. We have one more question to get to, and I'm going to ask that your comments about this question initially be restricted to 1 minute each. And it's about highways in the north. We've touched on that a bit. Highway 17
Highways.
and 11 are Northern Ontario's 400 system. But in the north, they're mostly two-lane highways. They're often shut down for hours, sometimes days because of winter storms and collisions. What is your strategy to increase safety of our northern highways? Mart Stiles, I'll give you 1 minute to open.
Okay, sure. Look, it is tough to get around on the roads in the north, no question. You are taking your life in your hands to get anywhere, and northerners also rely more on highways than anywhere else in the province. But look, Doug Ford will always put private profits ahead of public good, and we see that when it comes to our highways. Privatized highway maintenance has been a complete disaster. So first of all, as Premier, I'm going to bring winter road maintenance back in-house and back under public government control, provincial control. Let's also remember that when it comes to improving highways, there was money for improving highways up here, but Doug Ford took $158 million of those dollars that was earmarked for widening Highway 11 and 17 and moved that money down to southern Ontario for other projects. Maybe he thinks it'll help with his fake tunnel under the 401. But look, we're going to bring that money back to the north. We're going to widen Highways 11 and 17 as well as Highway 69, and we're going to build the Cochrane bypass too.
All right, let's move on to Doug Ford. 1 minute on what your government would do, your strategy to increase safety on our northern highways.
Well, our plan to protect Ontario highways is very simple. We're working hand in hand with First Nations community, Chief Powis, which he called me this morning, saying, way to go, we'll keep going. We're going to help make sure it's a two-lane highway on both sides. They're 100% behind us. We're undertaking one of the largest projects in the north, expanding Highways 11 and 17. And by the way, these three parties voted against it. We're building 18 new rest stops for truck drivers across the province. We're bringing back the Northlander, thanks to my friend Vic Fideli, as the Liberals canceled it. We're bringing it back. We launched Ontario 511 so northern drivers can get real-time information on snow clearing. And by the way, I love the people out there clearing the snows. We've invested over $600 million to repair and expand highways. They voted against it. We also invested nearly $150 million on winter maintenance. They voted against it.
That's your 1 minute, Mike Schreiner. 1 minute on northern highways.
So let's be clear with northerners. Every time the Ford government says, hey, we're going to spend 10 to 12 plus billion dollars building Highway 413 in southern Ontario, when there's a perfectly good highway right next to it, or tens of billions of dollars tunneling under the 401 instead of investing in immediate solutions to gridlock like paying the tolls of truckers on 407, it means the money for widening Highway 11, 17, and finishing 69 go down the priority list because it goes up in the south. So we need to have safe highways in northern Ontario. We need to have divided highways in northern Ontario. And in the interim, we need to come up with innovative solutions, such as the 2+1 dividers that the Nipissing Shores Chamber of Commerce has put forward as ways that we can immediately, at a low cost, improve safety while we're waiting for longer-term solutions like divided highways.
Thank you, Mike Schreiner. Bonnie Crombie of the Liberals.
As you all know, I'm a new Liberal leader, and I'm not taking responsibility for decisions made previously. I support the Northlander. It should never have been closed, and we'll be sure to open it because he hasn't gotten it done in the past 7 years.
I know.
Well,
I know.
sure.
What a joke.
Let's talk about, come
What
on.
a joke.
Your municipalities need to be provided with the sustainable funding you need for your roads. These are critical networks for you. They're life and death for the flow of people, for the flow of goods, and we're moving our children as well. As we all said, we'd put in the 2+1 on Highway 11 and 17 and expand 68 kilometers of Highway 69. There's a lot of work to be done, but you need the snow clearance as well. And I imagine the municipalities' budgets for snow clearing are through the roof. They should be cleared within the first 12 hours down to the bare pavement to make the roads safe, because they're treacherous. I know it and you know it, and they're treacherous in the summer as well. I remember being on 129.
Sorry, Bonnie
near
Crombie,
Chapleau.
that's your 1 minute. I'm sorry, and the afternoon is flying by, and it is now time for the closing statements. So you have up to 3 minutes. In reverse order from the opening, we begin with Mike Schreiner of the Green Party.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you to my colleagues for being here tonight. Thank you or this afternoon. Thank you to FONOM for hosting today, and thank all of you for being here. either in person or online. This is democracy in action, and we need to strengthen our democracy, something I believe deeply in. You know, I understand times are tough out there right now. So many families are struggling to get by, to find an affordable home, pay the grocery bills, maybe have a nice March break with their kids. And that's exactly why the Ontario Greens are fighting for fairness, fighting to make your life a little bit better after 7 tough, long years, fighting for generational fairness so that people in the north and the south can actually have an affordable home. You know, we've put forward a plan to legalize housing within existing urban boundaries so we can quickly start building homes people can afford in the communities they know and love where we have infrastructure. We would remove fees and charges on starter homes to make them affordable for young people again. We would actually start protecting renters because there is no city in Ontario where a full-time minimum wage worker can afford average monthly rent. We would actually have government get back into the building of affordable and deeply affordable nonprofit, co-op, and supportive housing with wraparound mental health and addiction supports. Because nobody in Ontario, when housing should be a human right, should be homeless tonight. Over 81,000 people in encampments right now. That is so wrong. We would lower taxes for people earning under $65,000 and households under $100,000, saving you up to $1,700 a month. Paying for it by asking the wealthiest tax bracket to pay a little bit more so we have fairness in our tax code. We would reverse the $1,500 cut per student in education so our students don't have to learn in overcrowded classrooms. We would actually make the investments we need for people to have access to primary health care and to end hallway medicine and ensure that mental health is health and work towards covering it under OHIP. And we would protect the places we love in this province. You know, I love to go fishing. I love to go canoeing. I grew up hunting. You can't do those things if you have a government that doesn't protect the nature that protects us. As we see the increasing frequency and severity of unsafe weather events fueled by the climate crisis, we have to protect our farmland and our nature that protects us. We can help people be able to afford things like giving a free heat pump program like PEI and New Brunswick have to lower your energy prices and address climate at the same time. We have solutions, but we need local champions, green MPPs to come to Queen's Park and deliver those solutions, because that's the kind of fair Ontario each and every one of you deserve.
Thank you, Mr. Schreiner. Now, Doug Ford from the Conservative Party.
Oh, first of all, thank you, Mike. I want to thank our other colleagues for being up here. You know, folks, this election is about leadership. Who do you trust to protect your family, your jobs, businesses, and communities? This election is about who's going to protect the people of Ontario. Over the last 5 weeks, we've seen what the next 4 years will look like under President Trump's White House. He'll shift the goalpost every single day on a whim, creating economic chaos every single time he does it. Whether he imposes tariffs tomorrow, next month, or next year, President Trump will continue to use tariffs to get what he wants. We have to be eyes wide open. Tariffs will devastate northern industries like mining, steel, and forestry. They'll put thousands of northern workers' jobs at risk. President Trump doesn't know what all we know, that Canada is not for sale. Canada is resilient, we're strong, and we'll stand up to President Trump and the tariffs. To protect Ontario, I'm asking the people for a strong, stable, 4-year mandate so we can outlast and outlive the Trump administration. The stronger the mandate, the better we'll be able to protect communities and families and businesses around Ontario. As we face down the threat of Donald Trump's tariffs, Ontario and Northern Ontario has never been more important. Northern Ontario is blessed to have an abundant supply of critical minerals. The U.S. needs it, the world needs it. But our critical minerals don't do us any good if they're sitting in the ground or being shipped off to China. The future prosperity of our province, of our country, unlocking economic potential of the Ring of Fire is absolutely critical. We need to do more. We need to do it faster. The need to speed up permitting and approvals of critical minerals in the ground, processed, shipped right here in Ontario. We need to ship those out around the world. And we need the federal government to get out of the way. They keep delaying and delaying. We need no more excuses, no more reasons why we can't or we shouldn't. Friends, we're in the battle of our lives here in the province, in our country. The front line of that battle starts right here in Northern Ontario with the critical minerals. We'll do whatever it takes to turn Ontario into a critical mineral and energy powerhouse around the world. Please join us, and together we'll do whatever it takes to protect the people of Ontario. I want to thank you, and God bless the people of Ontario. Thank you.
Now to Marek Stiles of the NDP.
Thanks. And first of all, thank you so much again for the opportunity to be here with everyone. It has been fun, I would say. Before we leave, though, I want you to ask yourself this question. In tough times, who do you trust to be on your side? 7 years of Doug Ford have cost you. His bad deals, his scandals have wasted billions of dollars, and they have made life a lot harder for Ontarians. He delivers for the wealthiest, the insiders, but never for the rest of us. And he's been singing the same song, folks, for 7 years. You know, most Ontarians, if they quit their job or they didn't show up for work, they wouldn't expect to get rehired. But Doug Ford does. And he thinks he can pull one over on Ontarians. Well, we can't afford another 4 years of this. We can't afford more hospitals closing. We can't afford to lose more family doctors or nurses so burned out because they've been so disrespected and taken to court by this government. We can't afford wait times in our emergency rooms of 10 to 22 hours if you're lucky enough to find an emergency room even open. You know, along Highway 11 right now, since we're in Northern Ontario, there are 800 kilometers between Timmins and Thunder Bay. There is one delivery unit on that highway, along that highway, for all of the women who need to give birth. Think about that. Right? That's Ontario today under Doug Ford, and that's the North. Homelessness in every community, an addiction and mental health crisis, the cost of everything just completely out of control. Ontario needs new leadership, and we need new ideas. In this election, you can trust me to be on your side. As Premier, I am going to fight against the rising costs. I am going to defend every job in every sector. I'm going to hire doctors and build homes, and I am also going to fix our schools. Listen, you're going to hear a lot over the next few weeks about the legacy of Doug Ford. I want you to think about what we can do that's better here in the province of Ontario, how we can change things. And so with that, I hope I will entrust you to consider supporting me as your Premier and to vote for a government, an NDP government, that's on your side. Thank you.
And now 3 minutes to Bonnie Crombie of the Liberal Party.
Thank you, and thank you for having me here. As you know, this is my first time on this stage. Previously, I was mayor of the city of Mississauga, so I've run a government, a pretty successful government for almost a decade. It was very fiscally responsible, but I really feel on social issues, as I hope I've demonstrated to you here today. What I want to say is that looking around at this tariff threat and Donald Trump to the south of us, I can't imagine that there's another premier in this country that would choose this moment, choose now to call an election. Honestly, we all want our premier to be hard at work at their desk, working, protecting jobs, our jobs, not just his own job by calling an election. It is irresponsible. But I think you've heard a lot tonight about the choices that you're facing. One thing's pretty clear. I don't think that Doug Ford deserves 4 more years. Our northern and our remote communities are really struggling. under 7 years of Doug Ford. And he raised the issue of trust. You can't trust him because he doesn't deliver. He doesn't do what he says he's going to do. Sure, it sounds folksy and kind of nice, but it's not real. It's not true. Back in 2018, he said he'd end hallway medicine. The wait times have doubled. Back in 2018, he said he'd cut your taxes. He hasn't cut your taxes. He didn't get it done, but I will. As part of my platform, I'm determined to do it. In 2022, he said he'd build 1.5 million homes. I was a mayor. I thought, oh, might be good. We'll get some incentives to build. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. He didn't get it done. Our record today is worse than it was in 1955. Worst housing on record. Jobs are leaving the province to other provinces that have figured it out. BC is building 70% more homes than we are. Think about that for a moment. So is Alberta, 36% more. Even Quebec. They figured out how to get it done under the same fiscal framework, under the same constraints like interest rates. You need a real partner here with the municipalities, and I'm someone who's walked in your shoes, and I understand what's happening. Sure, lots of downloading. That downloading has to stop. Our mental health and addictions issues, they need a plan. They need proper funding behind them. Not 350 beds, which doesn't go anywhere, not even in the city of Toronto, let alone over 10 years, spread over how many municipalities. This is a crisis right now, what is happening to people who are homeless, over 200,000 of them, people facing opioid issues. I have a plan. My plan is to ensure that you get the basics right. I'm going to ensure that you have a family doctor. I'm going to invest in industries as well, but my most critical goal for you is to ensure that all 2.5 million people in Ontario have a family doc. I'm recruiting 3,100 of them for less than the price of his fantasy tunnel under the 401. He'd rather put money into a foreign spa than put it into our healthcare system. He's putting more money into our spa than into the healthcare system. We're going to cut your taxes and build affordable housing. Thank you very much for having me here today.
And that concludes our debate this afternoon. I want you to thank you for being part of this important element of our democratic process. And I want to welcome back the Deputy Mayor of North Bay, Maggie Horsfield, for some final words. Maggie.
Thank you very much, Markus, for the exceptional job moderating. On behalf of FONOM, we want to express our gratitude to the leaders who have joined us today. We'd also like to extend our thanks to a few more who have made this event possible. We appreciate our members and their ongoing support of FONOM, which enables us to host events like this. A special thanks goes to the team at Canadore for all of their assistance. Additionally, we would like to thank our partners and friends at Cogeco for their efforts in allowing communities in the north to view the leaders today and for sharing the live feed with media across the province. We wish the leaders, their candidates from across the province, and their teams the best of luck over the next 2 weeks. We encourage voters to get out and make their voices heard on February 27th. FONOM's mission is to enhance the economic and social quality of life for all Northerners and to ensure a bright future for our youth. After the election, FONOM will collaborate with the Premier, government ministers, ministries, and the opposition parties to improve the lives of individuals throughout Ontario. Thank you for coming out today. Take care.
All right, Maggie Horsfield will be joining us momentarily to discuss everything that just went on stage over the course of the last hour and a half. But for the viewers, ask yourself these questions. Did you hear what you wanted to hear? Is there something that you heard that perhaps changed your mind? And so the leaders of the parties will now be dealing with the media. So more than a dozen media will be contacting them somewhere around that stage area. They'll all do their scrums there, get their information. And they are building up to another debate, which is going to be on Monday in Toronto. So a bit of a break, but the election is sneaking up. Just 13 days away. It's Valentine's Day, February 14th, the election on the 27th. Maggie, did you hear everything that you wanted to hear from the candidates today?
I think that the questions that we asked really gave us the idea of where they stand on supporting Northern Ontario and the mission of FONOM. A lot of those questions we've been chatting with them about at many delegations, and so it was refreshing to hear what they're going to do to address them.
More than just tariffs were discussed today, so there was some focus on Northern Ontario highways, on education and healthcare. How important was it to hear that?
It was really refreshing. I think we're seeing, a health crisis in Ontario with individuals who have mental health addictions and, frankly, don't have access to primary health care. And to hear what their plans are, I think will give us an idea of how we can move forward to make sure that the people of Ontario are taken care of.
Do you feel like the people of Northern Ontario are understood and going to be represented moving forward?
I do think so. I think this election is an opportunity for folks to vote in a candidate that they think represents them well. And I do think that message that Northern Ontario needs to be taken just as seriously as our counterparts in Southern Ontario was heard, and that those issues relating to the highway, to the municipal funding framework, they were addressed through that debate.
And as the Deputy Mayor of North Bay and somebody who serves in so many different roles in the community, are you proud that you're able to host this?
It was great to be able to host this. I know there's only 2 debates during this election, and to have one of them here in North Bay is really a testament to the importance of Northern Ontario and to FONOM. We were on the ministers at the Aroma Conference and really wanted to make sure that we had the opportunity to host them.
Thank you so much, Maggie.
Thank you very much.
There's Maggie Horsfield, the director of FONOM, and thank you so much for tuning in to Your Vote on YourTV. If you have any thoughts, send them our way on social media at YourTV North Bay. For everybody who helped out on crew, I'm Dan Malta.